Hello everyone, and this is the Tesol Macedonia-thrace Northern Greece summer event, June 15th, probably the first weekend when most students are out of school, and we are so happy, so honored to have IATEFL Vice President Miss Alexandra Popovsky, Alex, my good friend, presenting for us. I don't think Alex needs much of an introduction, but I am going to make a short one. She is obviously a teacher and a teacher trainer. She's a consultant, and she's really passionate about language education. She holds an MA in professional development for language education from the University of Chichester, where she deepened her knowledge and skills in the field. Her professional interests include multimodality, about which she is going to talk to us today, incorporating visual aids into language teaching, and exploring effective reading comprehension strategies. She is particularly interested in reading as a tool for exploring and discussing issues such as social injustice, diversity, and inclusion with learners of English. I was really touched to see that Alexandra is passionate about no single stories. This means writing and exploiting stories about countries and cultures and communities that are usually excluded from published ELT materials. Alexandra, we are so honored that you're here today presenting for us. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Maria, for the invitation. I'm really happy to be here and to share some things that I learned, that I researched about multimodality and visual thinking with your members and, of course, teachers from other countries as well. So let me just share my screen so that we can start. And I have to go back. Okay, here we go. So as Maria said, I'm a teacher and teacher trainer. I've been doing this for a very long time. And although I'm not in the classroom as much as I would like to be nowadays, I still always say that that's my first profession, my first love. So first of all, I'm a teacher and I love teaching. And I think that whatever we do in the classroom really does influence what happens outside our classrooms as well. We might not know what that influence is at that very moment, but I'm sure that when you meet your student, for example, in a street after 10 or 15 years, that's when you see the influence, when they share what they've been doing and how you've influenced their lives. So today I'm going to talk about multimodality, which is actually a focus of my research, but I am also connecting it to visual thinking. And we're going to have a little bit of a practical session at the end. So we're going to discuss different activities that we can use to actually help our students with their reading habits, their reading skills, and their reading comprehension. And if you've ever heard me talk about multimodality or reading, I always start with the reasons why I talk about reading and multimodality together. So the first reason why I always talk about reading and the importance of reading is that I think that we've forgotten that reading is not our natural skill. It's not our innate skill. And Professor Wolf, in her book, Proust and the Squid, writes that we were never actually born to read, and that reading is quite a recent invention for our species. But what we did with this invention is that we actually rearranged the very organization of our brain. And what that did is it expanded the ways that we humans are able to think, and that actually changed the intellectual evolution of our species. And I think this is extremely important for us as teachers and teacher trainers to remember, because I think that sometimes when you start teaching very young learners who still cannot read, we think that they can learn that immediately, and we forget that reading is not, as I said, our natural skill. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of patience to teach someone how to read and to learn how to read as well. Reason number two why I talk about the importance of reading is because there is something that is happening at this very moment in every single country around the world. And that is something that Gallagher calls read-aside. What is read-aside? Well, read-aside is a systematic killing of the love of reading. And in his book, and Gallagher actually lists 4 reasons for the occurrence of read-aside. And to be honest, I completely agree with him on all of these. So the first reason is that schools actually value the development of test takers more than they actually value the development of readers. And as you know, because I know the Greek market in Greece, a lot of schools are focused on exam preparation, right? How to take different international exams, what your students need to know to take these exams. And this is actually something that we also have in public schools, because we know how focused we all are on distributing, administering tests and putting grades based on these tests as well. The second reason for read-aside that Gallagher mentions is that schools are actually limiting authentic reading experiences. So schools are mostly focused on textbooks, course books that are used for different subjects, not only for English or any other language, but also when you look at, let's say, a school library and all those books that are in that library, you will see that those libraries do not always carry different different literary formats that are closer to these new generations than all those old traditional novels. And I'll come back to this a little bit later. Another reason for read-aside, or this systematic killing of the love of reading, is our fault, the teacher's fault. The reason for this is that we are over teaching books. And when I say over teaching books, is that it means that we do too much. So when we assign, for example, a book, or when we have a text in our course book that we are using with our students at that moment, we just do too much. We give too many activities, too many exercises. We're constantly bombarding our students with things that they need to do in connection to that book or to that text. And then we also underteach books or text, meaning that, again, we assign a book or we have a text in a course book, and then we don't do a lot of things with it. We give them a couple of exercises, maybe a gap fill or the usual reading comprehension questions, or maybe true, false, and that's it. We don't dig deeper into that text, into that book. So for all of these reasons, you can see in your classrooms among your students that they don't really like to read, not academic reading, but any kind of reading. They don't even want to pick up a book that is like a fiction book for teenagers to read. So as I said, that's reason number 2 why I always talk about reading and read-aside as well. And the third reason is, again, something that is connected to the research that's been done by Professor Marianne Wolf. And in her research, she actually talks about a biliterate brain, not a bilingual brain, but a biliterate brain, meaning that nowadays our students read more on a screen than on a piece of paper. And this biliterate brain actually is a brain that can read both on paper and on screen. Because with all of these technological advancements, all of these technological developments, reading will again rearrange the organization of our brain and possibly again influence further intellectual development of our species. So this is because electronic communication actually increases that need for effective reading skills and effective reading strategies, because we need to cope with a very large quantity of information that is available to us. So what Professor Wolf actually says is that when we start teaching our students how to read, we should start teaching them how to read on paper from real books, something that they can touch, something that they can smell. And this should be done until, let's say, the age of 9 or 10. After that, after they've mastered enough the skill of reading and how to apply different reading strategies, we can then transfer them to start reading on a screen so that they can actually apply the same reading strategies to reading a text on a screen. And she refers to this as having a biliterate brain, a brain that can function in both traditional, written, monomodal reading world and the new digital multimodal reading world. So 3 reasons why I always talk about reading and multimodality together. So now we're going to take a look at what multimodality actually is. And I can give you a lot of different definitions of multimodality, but I'm going to stick to a very simple one. So multimodality, first of all, is using multiple modes or multiple forms of communication. So we can have spoken, we can have written, we can have visual, we can have auditory, and even gestural to actually convey some kind of meaning. It means that we integrate these different modes of communication, of presentation, to create something that we call a more holistic understanding of a certain concept or a certain phenomenon. Now, there are different types of modes, and as English language teachers, you're all familiar with the CFR, right? The Common European, Framework of Reference. And you probably have noticed that in the new CFR, they no longer use the word skill, they use the word modes. So that means that they recognize that there are different modes of communication to the ones that we were used to before. So when we look at these different modes of communication, we always start with the basic one, which is the linguistic one. Okay, so this is the first mode. Then we have the audio. Then we have the visual. And this one is the most popular because we always connect it to visual literacy. And because we, as teachers and teacher trainers and ELT professionals, we also like to talk about visual literacy because images, pictures, right, are all around us. Then we have the gestural mode. And this one is, well, it might come as a surprise to some because they don't really see gestures as a mode of communication, as a way of creating meaning. But you probably have noticed, and you will notice in a lot of speakers and people in general, when they communicate, right? We use gestures a lot, and we use body movement to express what we think or how we feel. And the last mode is the spatial mode, which actually refers to the placement of objects and people in space. So we talk about, for example, foregrounding or backgrounding, proximity to some things in a certain space and what kind of a meaning that can create. Now, this is all connected to the work that was done back in the 1990s by the New London Group. And they presented this theoretical overview of their new approach to literacy that they called multiliteracies, because they realized that we could no longer, as educators, rely on the traditional definitions of literacy and traditional literacies of reading and writing. So instead of using the word modes, they use the word design. And again, these are the same designs, the same modes that I've just mentioned. Okay, so we've got the audio design, for example, the spatial design, gestural design, we've got the visual design, and the linguistic design. So multimodality is a combination of all of these modes to communicate and to convey meaning. So we are no longer monomodal. We no longer read only monomodal texts, for example. We read in a completely different way. Some of you might have heard of the sixth skill when it comes to languages, and that is the skill of viewing, which also refers to multimodality. However, I always say that for me, reading actually encompasses all of these modes, because reading is no longer about reading a text, only words. Reading is now about reading images, reading sounds, reading gestures to create meaning, to convey meaning. Now, when it comes to multimodal text, okay, so texts that combine these different modes of communication, we have different ones. Okay, so for example, we have paper-based multimodal text. So if you could just quickly in the chat put what examples of paper-based multimodal text you know. So paper-based, printed. Newspapers, good. Magazines, posters, newsletters, leaflets, advertisements. Yep. ELT magazines, like ELT News. Yes. Argy, I'm just asking for examples of paper-based multimodal text, okay? So something that combines different modes of communication. Recipes. Okay, good. So, but nobody mentioned some of my favorite ones, okay, that I'm going to share with you now, okay? Picture books. They're multimodal text, paper-based. Graphic novels, again, my favorite. Comics as well. You mentioned posters. Zines, for example, okay, as well. You know, those magazines that our students make on their own. Collages as well. They are multimodal text. Oh, menus. I like that one. Then we also have digital multimodal text. So what are examples of digital multimodal text? Can you put them in the chat again? Blogs. Vlogs, ads, news feeds, good. Websites, very good. Digital storybooks, right? E-shops. I'm glad somebody mentioned e-shops. They are definitely multimodal text. Newsfeed, okay, great. Yeah, you're absolutely right. So these digital multi-social media posts, that's right, Annie. So these digital multimodal texts are movies, you know, film, animation, podcasts, okay, where you have visual, you have audio, you have linguistic, you have gestural, okay. If you actually record it as a video. Any kind of graphic, PowerPoint, any kind of a presentation, not necessarily PowerPoint. It can be done, for example, in Canva or Prezi. Digital posters, digital stories. Somebody mentioned already web pages. And again, my favorite, digital interactive graphic novels. What would be live multimodal text? What do you think? Live multimodal text. Clips, social media reels, subtitles, okay. Podcasts or interviews, yeah, good. So some examples of live multimodal text are any kind of dance or an oral presentation like this one, or any kind of performance like in a theater, let's say. That's a live multimodal text. That's why I said reading is not just about reading words on a piece of paper, right? Or in a book. Reading is how you read, for example, dance movements, okay, movements in a performance where actors are on a stage. That's that spatial mode. So, for example, if someone is to the front, it means that they have um, more importance, more significance in a story. If they are to the back, maybe they're not as important. In graphic novels, for example, if you see a person in a panel, in those boxes that you find in graphic novels and comics, is to the back, a smaller, let's say, figure, it means that maybe that person is somewhere in the past. Okay, so in graphic novels, they can show the past through spatial positioning of their characters. So these are all different types of multimodal text. Now, why are multimodal texts important when it comes to reading and reading comprehension? Because, as I said, we have these new generations who no longer read, they no longer read in the way that we used to read and learn. And as teachers, we need to adapt to these new generations, their interests and their needs. These new generations, and even as the teachers, we are constantly in this visual and auditory world, tactile as well. We see a lot of images online. We hear a lot of things, right? We listen to podcasts. We listen to videos. We don't have to watch them, actually. That's what I do sometimes. I play a YouTube video and I just listen to it. I don't have to actually watch it. So reading now has become completely different. So now we need to teach our students not only how to read words, so that linguistic mode, but how to read images, for example, how to read sound, because sounds can be very important in a multimodal text. They can convey emotions, okay? And I'm sure you will agree with me when I say that. So reading and creating these multimodal texts is actually something that represents very important real life skills, because we need to prepare our learners for their future careers, whatever they may be. However, most of the reading and writing assignments in schools are still very monomodal, very alphabetic, very static. And multimodal text can make a huge difference in this, as I call it, fight against read-aside. Because multimodal text can be extremely motivating and extremely engaging for our learners. So, for example, when I deliver teacher training sessions on graphic novels and comics, I always say that I emphasize the educational value of graphic novels and comics because they are that literary format that our students, that our learners can relate to. and they can definitely motivate our learners, engage them in that reading process. Also, multimodal texts cater for different learning abilities, for different learning preferences. As you know, we no longer talk about learning styles. However, we still have our learning preferences, and these multimodal texts, a combination of pictures and sounds, for example, can cater for different learning preferences and abilities. Um, this is especially important and true for students who are dyslexic, who cannot read properly. So we need to support them and we need to help them. And there is a very specific reading comprehension strategy. Maybe you've used it in your teaching, called visualizing, in which students read or listen to a text and they close their eyes. That's what I usually ask them to do if I'm reading text. They close their eyes and they pay attention to all the images that they create while listening to that text. After that, I ask them to draw any of the images, and then they need to describe them for me in writing or orally. So for students who are reluctant readers or who have difficulty reading, this is extremely helpful because they don't have to read, they listen to a text, but you can, as a teacher, still see how much they've understood by looking at what they've drawn for you and how they describe the images. There is a lot of vocabulary there. There's also a lot of grammar there. Multimodal texts are excellent for honing critical thinking, for creativity, for inference, reading between the lines, for communication, and for collaboration. Because when you ask your students to create a multimodal text, such as a poster, a digital or a paper-based one, they work together, they collaborate, they agree on things so that they can come up with that final product, which is a multimodal text. There is the development of vocabulary and grammar of all 4 language skills, or as I said, 4 modes of communication nowadays. There is also rich and very meaningful input for both affective and cognitive engagement. Sometimes our students react respond more to an image or a sound than to a written piece of text, for example. And something that is extremely important is that by using multimodal text, we actually provide choice for our learners, meaning that we offer them a choice of how they want to express themselves. They can do it by using the linguistic mode in combination with the visual mode, or they can use the visual mode in combination with the audio mode. They can create a video so they can express themselves through gestures as well, or the spatial mode. So there's plenty of choices for our students here. Now, how's this connected to visual thinking? Now, I don't know if you're familiar with visual thinking and thinking routines, but there is something that is part of a project called Project Zero, done by the School of Education at Harvard University. Project Zero actually started based on a Swedish, actually, a concept of visual thinking. The Americans took that and expanded it a little bit. And it has nothing to do with images only. Visual thinking is all about applying strategies that can actually show us how our students think, what are the steps in their thinking when they come to a certain answer or a conclusion. And as part of this visual thinking, they have a whole set of thinking routines. And that is something that I'm going to talk about in the next part and connect it to multimodality. So before I move on to these thinking routines, I would just like to kind of wrap up the first part and say that this is the reason why teachers are important and we will be important in the future as well, because we are the ones who are responsible for arousing the child's interest in reading by using clever illustrations, exercises, and creative activities as well. So let's focus now on these thinking routines from Project Zero. So basically, a thinking routine is a very simple procedure, and it's a set of questions or a brief sequence of steps that we can use to actually scaffold and support our students' thinking. So you might have heard of some of these, and they're called thinking routines because we need to apply them constantly, use them in our classrooms constantly so that they become routines and our students get used to using them to think about different concepts and to show us, okay, their thinking process. Now, the first one that I would like to share with you is this one. So this one is called See, Think, Wonder. And as I said, I think it's, sorry, hold on. My slides keep jumping. I don't know why. Okay. And as I said, you might be familiar with this one because this one is hugely popular. And I usually give them an image such as this one. And I asked my students to answer these three questions. So let's answer these three questions in the chat box. So what do you see? What do you think about this? And what does it make you wonder? Okay. So I'm going to give you, let's say, 30 seconds to look at this image closely and carefully. And then I would like you to put in the chat what you see, what you think this is about, and what it makes you wonder. Good. Okay. 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 No idea where he's going or coming from. Good. Yes, Maria, right? It's scary. Okay. Why? Where is he going? Where was he? Probably poor and really tired and worried. Okay. Yeah. Probably homeless, looking for a shelter. Oh, I like that, Anthony. I wonder how cold he is. How cold he's feeling. Yeah. A man who seems a bit sad. hmm Good. And how do you know that he's walking in the snow? Lots of you mentioned that. Ah, good. Okay. Okay. That's right. So see those details that we would probably ignore, okay, unless we ask our students to actually look at an image for 30 or 60 seconds and pay attention to all the things in an image. Good, the background. Because I think that images, even in course books, they're so underused. We don't use them enough. And they're there not just to look pretty, okay? They're there to actually contribute to the learning process. Excellent. So, as I said, this is a very popular, very common thinking routine. And when you use it often and regularly, your students get used to looking at things in this way. Okay. And see, think, wonder is perfect for multimodal text. So, especially when you just show them an image first and then combine it with a text. Then I would, for example, after this, use another popular thinking routine, which is think, pair, share. So they thought about this, then they pair up and they discuss an image or a text, and then they share with the rest of the class. And this image is actually from a course book, and a text is about a janitor at a school who was extremely poor, and he would walk a long way to get to work. And then the students from that school decided to actually raise some money, some funds, and buy a car for this man. And that's what they did. So we can do plenty of things with just one image, okay, and then connect it to a text, for example. Now, let's take a look at another thinking routine that you can use with any type of a multimodal text. And this thinking routine is called claim, support, question. Now, this is again, as I said, because it's like a sequence of steps. It's very simple. So there isn't a lot of teacher preparation, and students get used to these and they love them, to be honest. So in this thinking routine, okay, your students, your learners need to identify a claim that the author made or a point. Then they need to support this claim with some kind of evidence or quote, okay, from that particular text, or a combination of text and image and sound. And then they need to come up with a question that arises about that claim, that statement, or evidence. Okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at a very short text in which we're going to use this thinking routine. But as you read the text and as you look at the claim and the support and the question, I would also like you to think about an image that would go with the claim, the support, and the question. Okay, something that you would create to visually represent these three things. Okay, so let me show you the text. So remember, what is the claim? What kind of support can you find, okay, for that claim? And what is the question that arises from that claim or evidence? Okay, so very short, okay? So I'll give you some time to read it. So claim, support, question. You can type all of these in the chat box, or maybe you would like to share with us, or you can maybe unmute and say what you think. And we're building upwards, okay? Integrating upward urban development. Good. Support. Mm-hmm. How can we be so stupid? Okay. Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Have we learned anything from that disaster, 9/11? Yeah. So what kind of a multimodal text would you create after doing this? Claim, you have the support, you have the question. So how would you create a multimodal text? What kind of an image or maybe sound would you use? Relocation, population, earthquakes. Ah, good. And your video showing urban development in cities such as Dubai. Yeah, quite popular for high rises. Self-sustained building, vertical gardens, turbines, happy people having coffee, and then inside terraces and exercising. Urban sprawl with a small, tearful tree trying desperately to sprout through a crack in the cement. A collage of photos of green spaces, megacities, and skyscrapers. Mm-hmm. Good. Excellent. So this is, as I said, what I do with my students to create a multimodal text, but also to work on their reading and their reading comprehension. So I use claim, support, question, and then ask them to combine those with a visual or an auditory mode. I also give them something like this as well if they want to write their ideas down. So just two simple columns, one for the claim and the support, and one for the question. And they get used to this as well. You know, it's a thinking routine, so they start thinking in those terms. Another one that I like to use is this one, and it's called Connect, Extend, and then Challenge. Oh, our different images with a short video. Okay, I like that very much. So you show them, for example, an image or a video, and then you ask them to tell you how the new information connects to what they already know. Okay, so activating their schemata, their background knowledge, experience. Then how that expands stretches your thinking, their thinking, and what doesn't make sense or provoke puzzlement. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to stop sharing because I want to show you something, an image that we are going to use for connect, expand, and challenge. So how the new information connect to what you already know. Okay. So what you see in this image, how it expands or stretches your thinking, you know, get you out of your comfort zone, and what just doesn't make sense or provokes puzzlement. Okay, so let me stop sharing so that I can show you my images. Okay, or just one image. Just give me a second. Okay, here we go. I accidentally closed the window where I had my images, so that's why I'm again. I'm sure this happens to you all the time when you're on a computer with multiple. Does open. Okay, so let's see if this is the correct one. Yes. Okay. So let me share again. Okay, here we go. So remember, connect, send, and challenge. So how does it connect to your previous knowledge or experience? I'm trying to make it bigger. Good, Antigone. Thank you, Kanya. I'll tell you about the artist as well. Like I can share some more images, like same artist. Yeah. And I think that connects really, really well with our own experience as well, because I think this is what used to happen back in the days when I was a student. Lots of work, um, a lot of workload, school workload. Yeah, many different things in the past. Tiger mother's child, and the burden child. She's hurting her daughter. Okay, very good, Mary. I like your ideas. I like your opinion. Good. Challenges to educate parents on the issue and the consequences as well. Good. Okay. And then you can add to this visual mode of this text, let's say by adding maybe some music. Your students can maybe add a piece of music to this, or maybe create a video based on this, or maybe even do some kind of a write a dialogue that they can then perform. Okay. But it all starts with the image and the thinking routine. So let me show you some more images by this artist. This is a Japanese artist called Avogado with a G sound, but nobody knows who this person is. But the images that this artist creates, they're absolutely fantastic and they're a little bit scary. So I wouldn't use them with my young learners ever, maybe with my teenage learners and adults as well, because as I said, they're very, very powerful and there are so many things that you can do with them. Let me show you another one. I keep them on my drive. Okay, so for example, this one, very realistic, something that our students can relate to. Hold on. This one as well. And this one. I really like this one. It's very scary, but it's the monster behind the screen, right? So very powerful images. Maria, if you want, I can share the link to these images so that you can share them with the
I can
participants.
include them in the email. Yeah.
Yeah, good. Okay, exactly. Okay. So let me go back to the PowerPoint. Okay, no, hold on. This is not what I need to share. I need to show my other screen. Let's see. Okay, good. So as I said, this is another thinking routine that we can use. And there is another one that I love using, and that's the one that is called I used to think and now I think. And this one is excellent for um, those classes when we talk about topics that we don't usually talk about, and when we want our students to look at things from different perspectives. So they say, I used to think. So we have these prior assumptions about something. But now, after looking at a graphic novel, for example, about gender or about slavery in the United States, now I think. So we have this revised thinking that is based on reading a multimodal text. This one is extremely, extremely simple to use. Now, I'm going to share one more thing with you and then kind of wrap things up. And remember, I mentioned that multimodal text provides choice, but also because we still have very monomodal assignments that we give our students, I like to offer something different to my students. And this is something that I call a vision board, because I want them to really look at things from different perspectives and do things differently. So I offer them this choice board for reading. So when we read a text or when we read a book or a graphic novel, I ask them to choose one of these things to do as part of their assignment or their homework, whatever you want to call it. So one thing is, for example, to create a trailer to advertise the text or book. They can draw their own comic strip about an event from the text that they can really relate to. One of my favorite ones is that they need to create a dance move for one of the characters, because they're also obsessed with all of those dance moves on TikTok and other social media platforms. They need to draw or make an object that is related to the text, and then they write about the text or an event from that text from the object perspective. Okay, like a hat or a pair of glasses or a pen or a pencil, etc. And it's quite interesting how they see things from the perspective of an object, something that we wouldn't usually notice, for example. Or maybe they can create a poem by blacking out words in the text, the blackout poems, as they call them. So they need to black out everything that they think that they don't need, so that they're left with a poem, okay, about an idea that they have in relation to the text. So this vision board, as I call it, is my choice board for their assignment after we read a text or a graphic novel or a comic or any kind of a fiction or nonfiction book. So I would like to say at the end that we should not think of multimodality as the perfect answer to this read aside. But when we combine multimodality with visual thinking and thinking routines, I think that we can slowly start engaging our students with reading a little bit more. And that's why I really always advise teachers not to shy away from using graphic novels or comics or TikTok videos or Instagram reels in their teaching practice and in their classrooms. For me, multimodality is this art. And in this art, we weave together all of our senses because we really want to shape something that I call a richer and more complete understanding of the world, because our world is not monomodal anymore. So thank you very much. If you have any questions or if you want me to share something with you, you can just email me and I'll be more than happy to share my thoughts and ideas with you.
Alex,
Thank you
thank
very
you
much.
so much for this presentation. We learned so much and we did so many activities with you. I think there is a question in the chat.
Yes, I saw that.
Put it a few minutes ago. Welcome, Beatrice. How are you?
Thanks. I thought it was just going to start now at 5 o'clock, but probably
Greek time. Yeah, doesn't matter. Yeah. There is a recording. God. Don't worry.
I'm sorry about it, Alex.
No, don't worry, so Beatrice. Sorry. It's fine.
Not a problem.
I was looking towards it so much.
No, it's okay. Don't worry. I get confused with time zones, and I always have to
trust
check,
me.
You know.
Trust me. I do too. So
sorry.
let's take a look at Argyro's question. Do you believe that the use of images as a teaching tool is more effective for younger students, such as junior learners, or can they be equally beneficial in a classroom with senior learners, older learners?
Yeah. Okay. No, I believe that images or any multimodal text, they can be used with any ages. Okay. Young learners, teenage learners, young adults, elderly students, because as I said, we live in a world that is multimodal and we are used so much to seeing images all the time, hearing things around us, doing things. One thing that I really don't like, for example, is when I need to email with someone back and forth, or send messages, because I cannot see that person. I cannot see the body movement or facial expressions, because they say so much, because sometimes you misinterpret someone's message. You see it as rude or very negative or very aggressive, but actually it's not. Okay, after you actually talk to that person and you kind of realize that you misinterpreted the messages. So that's why I believe that multimodal text, images, as I said, all these different modes of communication, they are for all ages. And all of these activities, all of these thinking routines are adaptable. So you can adapt them for very young learners as well. For example, see, think, wonder. You just need to simplify those questions and, just ask a very, very young learners, what can you see? And they can just say red, white, apple, a bowl. Okay. Use a little bit of your first language. It's not like it's against the law to use L1 in our classrooms, right? So these are very, very adaptable. So all ages and all subjects as well. Okay, so it's not only for teaching and learning a foreign language. These thinking routines can be used across the curriculum. They can be used for history or geography or even science, for example. Have I answered the question? I think I have, right? Okay, good. Okay.
Pictures are so important. We can do so much with images, all kinds of images. I haven't been successful at creating AI images so far, but give me time.
It's all about prompt, but AI is not perfect when it comes to images. It still gives some very creepy, very scary images.
But there is a wealth of images out there already existing, and
that we can use that are copyright free.
And to be honest, we are quite lucky because several textbooks give good quality pictures that can be used in the setting that we teach.
Yeah, as I said, I think we don't use them enough.
No.
Course book images are not used enough. We just see them as decoration, but they are there for a purpose. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining Tesol Macedonia-Thrace, Northern Greece, for this session on the in June, on the first weekend of actual holidays for most students. Let me remind the members of Tesol Macedonia-Thrace, Northern Greece, that this summer we continue through to September with sessions. So the next session is going to be on 14 juillet. We're going to honor the French. It's actually a month from now, the 14th of July at 6 o'clock. Now, based on the Google form that I sent you, there was people chose every day, weekdays, Mondays, Wednesdays, something like that, because of course the weekends are for you know, to go to the beach. And it will be led by yours truly, and it will be on how learning is changing. Next month, it's going to be earlier because, as you know, from the 11th of August until the 20th of August, the country closes down. So we're going to have it around the 5th. I haven't talked to Efthymia yet in detail, but I will let you know. Enjoy your summer. Enjoy reading other things than course books, and see you around. Keep following our webinars. Thank you, Alexandra. Thank you, to
everyone.
all of our friends, all our IATEFL associates, ATAI associates. Tesol Spain is not officially our associate, but hey, we are united through IATEFL. Thank you, Beatrice, for joining. We do. The moment we are sorted out legally, we will talk about this. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.